have the cosmetic side, but you mentioned my executive MBA. I've always had that little entrepreneurial side to me.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to get you more patients and more profits. Now, today's podcast is a special guest named Dr. Cory Goldberg. He's a Royal College certified plastic surgeon and diplomat of the American Board of Plastic Surgery with advanced training in craniofacial surgery at the University of Southern California and Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Now, Dr. Goldberg is currently in private practice in Toronto, Canada, and performs a full range of breast, body contouring, facial procedures, as well as hair transplant. Now, he also completed an executive MBA to work on developing non-hospital surgical facilities for Ontario, while also serving as business development consultant for Valiant Canada, Galderma, and Johnson & Johnson, as well as volunteering for Operation Smile, doing cleft lip surgery around the world. Thank you so much for joining me on Beauty and the Biz. Welcome from America to Canada.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's a pleasure. I am looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. I always like to start with, how did you end up in private practice? Because nobody usually starts there. They usually start elsewhere, as you did as well. So can you just give us a little bit of that journey?
Absolutely. Well, when I started in plastic surgery, I had the intention of becoming a pediatric craniofacial surgeon, hence my fellowship training. What I found when I entered practice was there wasn't a pediatric job available to me. So I ended up in a community tertiary care hospital in Toronto, Canada, and I had a mixed practice, which was half reconstructive and half cosmetic. And over time, the Canadian healthcare system just resulted in growing wait lists and a real challenge for me to deliver good quality care. And so in August of 2022, after I'd been in practice, I would say 15, 16 years, I made the decision to exit the public component of my practice. And at that point, I became strictly private and grew my cosmetic aesthetic practice from there.
So are you currently a 100% cosmetic?
Yes, that's correct. I have the cosmetic side, but you mentioned my executive MBA. I've always had that little entrepreneurial side to me, and I've found that since I've exited the public system and I've gone strictly private, I've had a lot more flexibility to my schedule. So it's really allowed me to nurture those other interests and try to forward those kind of parts of my persona and things I'm really interested in.
So let's talk more about that, because it sounded like you were involved in opening like non-hospital surgical facilities. Is that what you're doing, or what are you doing in that regard?
Yeah, so that part of things has evolved over time through the past decade or so, and yeah, for the American listeners to the podcast, you're well aware, Canada has a universal payer social healthcare system, and I fully support the premise of that. But our healthcare system is really in crisis, and the past 40 years has not really seen any advancement in how surgical care is delivered. And I've seen this. My father was actually a vascular surgeon before me, and I watched through his career the issues that the system faced in delivering good quality care. And so a colleague of mine who is also a plastic surgeon, he's a hand and upper extremity surgeon, he and I over the past decade have worked towards developing the model of being able to offer surgical care outside of hospitals in ambulatory centers, which of course in the American system is commonplace, and in the Canadian system it's not. So trying to develop that model and the funding that goes with it has been an uphill battle and has required a fair bit of effort over the past decade. And so that I've really been trying to help grow that within the public system, and that's definitely changed over time.
So do you think it's possible to do that?
My short answer, sadly, Catherine, is no, I don't. After a lot of effort and investment in time and finances and having really amazing supporters and a great team, really it's come to a point where I hate to say this, but honestly, I really see the Canadian healthcare system as being like the Titanic. It is simply too large to turn, and or it's already hit an iceberg and it's well on its way to the bottom of the ocean. But it is definitely a healthcare system in crisis, and that's not unique. I mean, a lot of places around the world are facing that. I think Canada is really among the lowest, and I say that because we have the longest wait times for surgical specialists, the longest wait times for surgical care among all the OECD wealthy countries, and yet we spend, like the United States, we are in the top two per capita spending on healthcare, and yet we can't deliver good quality care. So I think our system is in need of change, but I've shifted to a point where I believe that change is going to come from outside the system rather than inside it.
I know we talk about Canada often because it sounds so good to give everybody health care and this one payer system. I've never seen it work, so I don't know. I don't have a good answer either, but I think it's going to take more than just like you know a committed person. I mean, it needs politics and government and it's too much. Yeah.
It really is. The stakeholders are the entities that really control our healthcare system. It comes down to the ministries of health of the different provinces. The labor unions have a huge voice, and unfortunately are a huge source of inefficiency in our hospitals. And those two entities and the hospitals themselves, who have budgets from the provinces for functioning, they really want to kind of control their own budgets and the power associated with the system that they have presently, and they are very obstructive to advancing that. So, I think, in private practice and my effort outside of the hospital, it's actually allowed me to develop what I think is a very usable model for delivering surgical care in a non-hospital setting and in a private setting. And actually, that's a way that we can advance the system in parallel rather than plugged into it, if you know what I mean.
Right. So, I mean, can you discuss the model or is it still top secret or?
Yeah,
Uh,
the Catherine, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. No, I'm kidding. It's not a secret. Honestly, the simple way forward is a matter of creating the facilities that can offer surgical care and being able to offer privately funded surgery to make the facilities run. And when I say privately funded, it needs to be things that are not covered by provincial healthcare systems, which includes a lot of commonplace things like vascular varicose veins, oral surgery, and of course cosmetic surgery. And that gets the engine going. I mean, to have a surgical facility run, it requires a certain amount of capacity, of course, to be efficient. So we are building operating facilities that will offer that, and at the same time have additional capacity that can offer publicly funded surgery, and we will be able to dovetail and achieve funding either through hospital or through provincial contracts, but after the fact, once the facilities are up and running. And in fact, right now, the facilities running in Canada are all very, very small, all completely for cosmetic surgery. There are not really larger entities, certainly none that would meet Joint Commission standards or typical American standards of ambulatory centers. So we are looking to build centers that are exceeding current standards in Canada so that we can offer a broader range of surgery. And a part of that will be offering medical tourism and actually attracting patients from outside of the country as well.
and still offering general anesthesia, or are you going down the IV sedation road?
No, you know what? I'm a firm believer in offering general anesthesia where there's a choice. I know my colleagues have a varied set of opinions around this, and I respect all. I personally prefer to offer general anesthetic because I recognize the risks in intravenous sedation, as far as airway compromise or needing to sort of spend the additional mental capacity monitoring a patient through that kind of surgery. So I offer general anesthetic at all the facilities that I work at, and I generally favor that. So we will be seeking level 3 surgical facilities with general anesthetic capabilities for certain.
Good. Well, good luck with the approval process because it's not easy down here at all. So it can't be easy up there,
There are definitely roadblocks, but we have excellent design team, and I think that we have a really good shot at actually developing something outside the hospitals. And of course, there's a lot of non-surgical things related to health and wellness, which I'm sure we'll get into that I think are also going to be really important for public health in general as well.
Let's do that now then, because I'm not clear. Is it going to be just it's a accredited surgical center, but it sounds like you're going to be doing more than just surgical?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've always personally dreamed of, and I'm really really excited is to have a surgical facility which is also built in with a hyperbaric center, a wellness and longevity center, and full set of aesthetic services. Ultimately, I want patients coming in to have a full set of treatments available to them on both the surgical and non-surgical side. And I also want to be able to offer more than just straight surgery. So that's why we're building in hyperbaric, and we will have longevity clinics in these centers. So we'll have physiology labs and the ability to do full assessments of patients. And we have a set of tools that are going to be built in that involve AI analytics on health parameters. So our cosmetic patients, our surgical patients, are actually going to be entered into a health span longevity program as well. And they'll have access to a full suite of opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have at a standard surgical facility. So we're kind of looking for a one-stop shop, turnkey, kind of like a health innovation city kind of a model.
So is this something that you would rent out to other surgeons? Or are you going to market directly to the consumer and then they say to their surgeon, by the way, I would rather recover over at your place? What's the business model?
So the business model will be this is largely physician driven. I really believe that physicians need to be at the heart of this.
Mhm.
So our funding model is one which involves physicians and allows them to invest. And so our surgeons, our anesthesiologists, everyone will be participating in these centers. And in so doing, they will have financial interest. So each center will have its own patients, will have its own operating rooms and clinic space for the surgeons. So I would look at it not so much that we're renting it to the surgeons, but the surgeons who are owners within the center are going to be using their own operating rooms. And of course, we'll have the opportunity to rent the additional capacity to surgeons who are not necessarily part of our group so that they can use the operating room. We'll also have pre-post programs, so surgeons who have their own practice outside of this will be able to take advantage of the various red light and other sorts of wound healing modalities that we'll offer. And so we'll actually be able to offer support services to surgeons outside of the group as well. But the ultimate goal is to create a network of these centers where surgeons will be able to participate and actually have ownership in the center that they're working in.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, although I will just tell you, surgeons don't play well together typically, so that'll be your challenge. I
I have a lot of experience handling surgeons, and in the end, honestly, the surgeons have a hard time working together for a few reasons, but one of them is certainly a concern over quality and a concern over corporate control of anything that they do. And also a lack of a sense of reward for their responsibility. I mean, surgeons are often charged with patient care and a lot of responsibility without compensation or a reward for that. So, by balancing the ownership and reward that surgeons and anesthesiologists are going to have as being part of these facilities, that can be balanced out. And we've gone through in great detail, developing the partnership agreements for our surgeons. As a group of surgeons, we will have control over the facility, the quality assurance, and those kinds of things. So that kind of oversight where the physicians are actually at the center of that decision making, I think that's paramount. I think that's what's going to give the surgeons the comfort to be in that kind of facility.
I agree completely, and I wish you luck. Any ETA on that?
So I anticipate our first center should open its doors in about a year and a half. And we have a second center, which is already in existence that we're going to be retrofitting and adjusting a little bit. And so I'm hopeful that within the next 2 years, we're going to have, two surgical suites and the associated services with both.
Nice. Okay, well, I'll catch up with you in a couple of years. But in the meantime, let's talk about your current practice. On your website, it looks like your surgical center is not in your practice, but it's like right down the street. How's that set up?
Yeah, so right now and up till now in my career, I have avoided building a surgical center, and so I rent time at a place that's not far away from my office. And that's actually worked out well from a business perspective. I mean, it's certainly been very modular for me. So as my practice has grown, getting additional operating time has been, easy. On occasions when I haven't been able to fill the OR or I've had to cancel OR days, I give my notice, but I don't have to worry about staffing around that. So it's really been very, very easy for me to grow. And because my practice was a mix of reconstructive and private cosmetic work, it worked well because it didn't mean that I was obligated to, work a certain amount to use capacity in my own facility. I've often compared the building of an operating room by a plastic surgeon to a pilot buying a plane. An individual pilot buying a 747, if you heard of such a thing, you'd think they're crazy. But surgeons do that on a regular basis where they'll build a facility. And, the United States, the group practice environment is actually, there's a lot more of that and a lot more people working together. In Canada, there's a lot of fragmentation and a lot of individual surgeons who have built their own facilities. And, to me, it's like a ball and chain. You're locked to your facility. It has to work a certain amount or it's going to lose money. And if you don't keep the staff happy and working a certain amount, you're going to have high levels of staff turnover. And of course, the expense of that is massive. So I really think that the group practice environment is really the right place to have your own OR, which is one of the rationales that brought me to the current idea of having these surgical facilities with a group of surgeons. But for now and up till now in my practice, it has certainly been very easy and modular to use a rental OR.
Right. Just to use the plane analogy, if you've ever flown private, it's very hard to go back, but then that's when they develop net jets and you can, rent your piece of the plane seat or whatever. It's just different levels of service. So many surgeons have said it was life-changing when they got their own surgical suite. The staff was spending hours trying to book time and the hospitals were kicking them out. And it just got to be really not easy to plan surgery. They were struggling to find places and then the staff issues. So there's no one answer. It's just whatever works for you. But you get to sit in coach or the front or first class or private. So.
That's a great comparison, and your point is very well taken. One of the advantage of having a modular OR is that kind of growth, but it also means that when I work with nurses, there's a sort of common cohort that I'm with, but over the years they change, and I definitely lose out on the benefits of having a place that's tailored to my needs. And I'm very well aware of that. So I look forward to the point of having this kind of OR system that I just described. But for now, it actually has been I would say a good skill set to be adaptable in the OR. It's a bit cushy when you fly private because it leaves and at your discretion and you have all the service just for you. But there are occasions that you don't get to have that. And, a good example, when I do my Op Smile missions, you don't always get the things that you want. You don't have the equipment or the sutures that you're used to. You're working with staff that don't even speak your language. So it's almost a skill, I think, to be adaptable in how you operate. And I think that that's really important because if you get that fixed in who you're working with or what you do, on those occasions that it doesn't quite go according to plan or things do have to change a little bit, you've lost out on the adaptability. So, don't get me wrong, I'm very much looking forward to having my own staff and the benefits of having that private OR. But until then, I appreciate my adaptability skill set in the operating room.
Absolutely. Because once you get spoiled, you can't go back. So, I mean, staying adaptable, especially in today's world, it's changing so quickly. I just gave a talk on this at a conference and I said, adaptability is a key skill to have in today's world because it's going to keep changing with or without you. So kudos to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to know that I have a key skill.
Yeah. Well, there's one. So,
one at least.
Yeah. So let's talk about your practice in general. You have a nice team there. How are you set up? I saw you have a nurse injector, patient coordinator. Who else is there?
So I have one person who's my lead administrator in the office that kind of runs the sort of administrative side of things and the physical space. I have someone else who is the patient coordinator and sort of overall practice manager. And as it happens, that person is my wife,
Oh,
which is amazing. So my wife Stephanie Lusk, she is her background. She was in cosmetic. She was in the fitness industry. She was lead operations at a very large gym chain here in Canada, and she brought all those skills into the practice. And so, she manages the HR. She helps to manage the marketing. She has a great social media presence. I mean, she's a model and has experience in the entertainment and promotions industry. So she really can oversee a lot of that, and that's great because it really offloads a lot of my responsibility as far as the oversight of the day-to-day running of the business, and it's meant that I can really focus that much more on the practice and the patients, and some growth initiatives and things as well on the side.
I always say marry well. Yeah, and that's one of them. If your wife, who you trust more than anybody else that you're going to encounter, if they can handle the marketing and the business side of your practice and you can focus on surgery, oh my gosh. I mean, that's the holy grail. So,
It really is, and Catherine, I'll tell you honestly and very transparently, I've had two totally different experiences with spouse in my practice because my wife is, Stephanie is my second marriage, and in my first marriage, my ex was a physiotherapist and wanted to do injection and become a part of the practice, and she did become somewhat integrated, but her approach to management was very different from mine. It was very top down. It was very dictatorial, and she felt that she had a special place in the practice. And she talked down to staff and expected them to prepare things for her, but didn't put in the effort herself. That my criticism around that is it's not my management style, and it actually was really very harmful. It was bad for the staff. I had staffing issues, and even after we separated, which is now over 10 years ago, the leftover culture issues in my practice took me years to overcome. So, to those who are thinking about bringing their spouse into the practice, like you said, if you find that right person as a life partner, I mean, that's the holy grail. And if they're a good business partner, wow. So, I was very nervous bringing my current wife Stephanie, bringing her into the practice because I had such a terrible experience, and honestly, it was the pandemic that did it. Through the pandemic, she was out of work. I was out of staff. I had to let everybody go because we kind of shut down surgery here for a period of time. And it was just a natural, like, to survive, we worked together, and it worked beautifully. And now the relationship is, I mean, it's honestly, I can't glow about it enough. It's amazing. But I also recognize that that's not an easy thing to achieve. It requires the right people, and it most definitely can go the other way. So, I'm appreciative very much of the status I have now. It's taken time, but it's a great fit.
yeah, nice. All right. Well, hang on to her. Make sure you meet regularly, keep the communications open. And honestly, the big secret is, do you share the same values? If you can have that discussion way earlier and find out, what is your management style? You have to have those discussions. Same thing with bringing on an associate. It's kind of the same.
Yep.
What's been the biggest challenge of growing your own solo practice?
I think the biggest challenge I faced is the fact that for so many years I had a mixed practice. And
Mm.
during that time, I didn't really focus on marketing very much. I really depended on word of mouth and I depended on physician referrals because I was getting so many referrals from the community for reconstructive things that also amounted to cosmetic referrals and sort of organic, patients. The past few years, as issues in the public system grew and I exited that system, it became very apparent to me that I was dependent on the organic source of patients, which I think I both know word of mouth and direct physician referrals are very valuable, because those my close rate on those patients is huge, and it just happens and it's very natural, and so that's the positive part of it. The negative part of it is that you can't really control it. You can't dial it up or down depending on your needs in the practice. So, what I found when I made the transition a couple of years ago is that it was really hard to get patients through the door and sort of up the volume as I needed to make the extra gap in my practice. And so that meant really actually digging in and getting my social media properly managed, developing a marketing strategy, and really that's taken me a couple of years. And at this point, I think it's up and running, and I feel really good about it. But truly, the past 2 years have been a struggle, and there's certainly been ups and downs in the economy and the environment that's also been a part of that. So it's to say it's been a smooth, easy ride would be very untrue. It's been a bumpy up and down ride, but I have my co-pilot beside me, and she's awesome. And that's really coming together and getting the right marketing team in place, and putting in the time to develop the assets around that. That's what's made the difference. So that's been the hardest part for the past couple of years for sure.
And just so you know, it's not easy for anybody. Some of them make it look very easy, but behind the scenes, there's nothing easy about any of this, especially in today's world. So regarding marketing, I see you have your website in order. Is there somebody behind the scenes working on the SEO organic side?
Yes, yeah. So I have a really amazing marketing team, and that's made up of someone who's sort of the I guess manager of that, and we have a content creator, and also a webmaster and SEO guy, and that's sort of my team of three. And both Stephanie and I interface with them regularly. We have weekly meetings, and from that we come up with our monthly newsletter, our promotions. We decide the content list that needs to be created, and it's a dual effort. I work to create content from the operating room, from my own experiences and thoughts, and Stephanie works with patients to get the patient experiences and actual personal encounters with patients, and so with that we develop our content, and then we feed it to our team, and they take it from there, and that's been working really well.
And are they also directing your social media? Because you're doing a good job on there.
Wow, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So yes, they are, and so that's where the content is coming from. So my social media I've had for lots of years, and I was doing okay. So I have some good background as far as searching for me, and a long track record on all of my handles. So it's a good foundation to start from. But most certainly the good quality content and the organization of it, and the sort of methodical delivery of that content, that's been engineered by our marketing team.
Well, one thing that you're doing very well, and I tell everybody this, and I don't know why they're not doing it, you need to get the patient become part of your content. So you've done a good job of interviewing them. How was your experience? Any advice for others? Let the patients help you grow your practice organically, and that's how you do it. Is there anything in particular you're doing to get that patient in front of the camera? Because that's not easy.
I'm fortunate in that I have good social connections with my patients through Stephanie, and I found that to be a really valuable gateway. Because as the physician, there are some boundaries. I try to maintain that relationship. But because Stephanie is involved in the practice so integrally, she's able to talk to patients and develop personal relationships with them to an extent that she can ask about that content. And we also are very good about when we do procedures on people that we know, and actually have a personal relationship outside of the practice, we immediately get them enrolled in doing that kind of material. So one of the people I did a sort of patient journey with is someone who I know personally. She's a former Playboy Playmate, a longstanding model, a cannabis influencer. Her name is Jackie Childs, and Jackie is a very dear friend. And I did a revision of a mommy makeover for her, and she was very public about it, and posted on all of her channels. And then more than a year later, we went to her and said, could we talk to you and do some interviews, and go through your experience, and that was actually very valuable. So I would say, if for most surgeons, if you look back at your roster of patients you've operated on, almost certainly you'll find a handful of them that are people that even tangentially, or a friend of a friend, or someone, and it could be a past experience, go back to them and ask them if they would be willing to make some content with you. And I think you'd be surprised that a lot of people are willing to share their story. And the way that I'm told that it should be couched, and I found this to be very effective, rather than asking someone to promote something for me and saying, hey, can you do this video for me? It's a, can you do this to help other patients? There are other people like you who are concerned and want to do something, and there are barriers to them understanding this and being comfortable. Can you help those other patients understand this? And in that frame, I find that a lot more people are willing to come forward with testimonials, and that's exactly the message to other patients. This is what the experience was really like.
Absolutely. What happens when they want something else in return?
I'm careful about that. So I mean, I certainly don't give away free procedures. I'm pretty sure that the state licensing boards would have concern about that, just like our college, of physicians and surgeons of Ontario. So yeah, I do offer discounts on the non-surgical parts of surgical care, in line with being willing to proactively film content and be a part of a promotion process. So I do offer those kinds of discounts, but I don't give out free things. And I have to say, it's really, really important to be responsible about that. I have seen and had to treat a lot of people who are in the media who have had really indiscriminate treatments done, both surgical and non-surgical, and to a point where they really don't look good anymore. And it's concerning. And I've had to rescue a couple from just being overfilled, overdone, overoperated. And I'm very aware of that slippery slope. It's easy to solicit free promotion from somebody, and not be as discriminate as you ought to be about their care. So I mean, if there's one cautionary word, it would be, treat these people as you treat any patient. You can't deliver special or different care, because that's the thing that leads to complications, and that's the thing that definitely would be an issue with state licensing boards. And really, it's just a bad calling card. You don't want to be known as the person that messed up some media figure. I can easily name a couple of people in Toronto that are very prominent on our local television stations who got messed up by some pretty good plastic surgeons in the city. I don't feel good about that part of our profession, and that is definitely a pitfall in this kind of an exchange.
Right. What about patient trends? Are you finding them different than they used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I am for sure. I would say one thing that I've noticed is a decrease in non-surgical, or at least a stabilization of it, and an increase in surgical. And I think that the non-surgical pendulum is sort of swinging back a little bit more towards the middle. Past 10, 15 years has seen a time where non-surgical treatments have ballooned. The options available have grown astronomically. It's been commodified. You can get injectables and Botox and lasers at every corner, in every strip mall, whether it's from a dentist or a nurse practitioner. And I know it's the same in the U.S. as it is in Canada. So, and of course, within that, there's gray market and really not safe stuff happening as well on both sides of the border. I know that for sure. And so that has really caused, I think, things to change a bit, because the norm now is over treatment, and the overdone look and complications from those kinds of things. I think at this point we're seeing more people looking for a natural look, looking for subtle results, and also wanting things that are long-standing. The temporary non-surgical results aren't satisfying people anymore. So I'm seeing an uptick in facial cosmetic procedures, and people looking for sort of more permanent solutions to what they're looking for. And I'm also seeing people that are more health conscious, and interested in looking after not just their beauty, but also their health. And I think that's another trend that I see growing in our industry.
Well, I'll tell you, the non-surgical marketing from the big pharma companies or from all the vendors, it's so enticing when you're a patient. And when the message is, oh, you don't need surgery, you can just do this instead. It's almost like you have to go through that journey to get to the surgical journey because you're trying to shortcut it. And it just sounds so good. It's like, really? Because I'm not dying to cut into my face if I don't have to, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think one of the key to that issue, and I really think it's because the surgical and non-surgical care got separated, right? And so when you go to someone who has just non-surgical offerings, and whatever setting that is, if all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. Someone comes in and they get a non-surgical treatment and they had a good result. What are they going to do next? Well, they're going to say, you know what, it's a good result. Let's go for something better. If a little bit of Botox is good, more must be better. And the practitioner has every bias to treat them. Do what the patient wants and fulfill that. And that results in, more and more treatment, but past the threshold. The premise of non-surgical treatment is to temporize. It's to take care of the things that it appropriately can treat and transition someone to surgical when it's the appropriate time. Or, be clear, this is the limitation of what you can achieve with non-surgical results. You can't go further than this, or you're going to start looking weird or having complications. But nobody says that. Nobody establishes that limit because they do just the non-surgical. So there is no transition to surgical. There is no limitation on someone's treatment, and I think that that's resulted in a whole lot of really indiscriminate care for patients, and that's that's the slippery slope that the industry has gone down.
Well, as a patient, do you know how confusing this is? You're just trying to figure out not only who's the provider you're going to use, but what are you going to ask them to do? It's gotten really complicated for the consumer patient. So that's actually a good question. How do you differentiate yourself? Because you're in Canada where you're at, you're almost as competitive as we are in a normal place here. How are you differentiating?
Yeah, so I guess two things I think that I really work to differentiate through, and one of them is my training, my background. I've done the craniofacial fellowship, and so I have a personal interest in facial aesthetics, and because of my background, it's led to in the hospital system I did tons of facial trauma and facial reconstruction. So in my private practice, I have a focus on facial aesthetics, facelifts and blepharoplasties, those kinds of things. And I also have a specialization in phenol peels, and I do phenol croton oil peels. I've been doing that for about 14 years now. And I was trained by an American surgeon by the name of Richard Ben Simon, and he's a lovely gentleman, and I've been very fortunate to have
We
him as a
know him.
mentor.
Hmm.
He's a phenomenal guy. We were just teaching in a course in Vancouver, teaching phenol peels to Canadian surgeons because it's a bit of a dying art here. There's not very many people who do it. So that kind of facial focus and my expertise in phenol peels, which is a bit unique, that's a differentiator for me, and that helps me to separate myself from other surgeons. And I think the other thing that's really important to me that I'm trying to grow is this association with health span and healthy longevity. I really think that the future of the aesthetic industry is going to be coming at patients from a perspective of trying to achieve beauty through good health and offering patients tools to achieve that. So patients come in asking to look more youthful, and really what they're saying is I want to look more youthful and be more healthy. And that gateway to transition someone to looking after their own health is actually it's a pretty easy transition. So that's one of the reasons that I really look forward to having the full suite of longevity tools and wellness capabilities so that I can actually offer these things to patients. And that way, a patient comes in, and if the right treatment is, injectables and laser and non-surgical, they can get that. But when it's the right time, they can transition and have something surgical done. And so all the sort of beauty aesthetic treatments, that'll still be there. But at the same time, in the background, I really want to look after people's well-being. I want to offer them tools to, dashboards and AI analytics to be able to analyze their own health. All the blood work and things that we're doing for surgery, those are all biomarkers. Those are all things that can help people track their health. So I really see a future where it's not a beauty industry; it's more of a beauty span. It's not just about beauty in the moment. It's not just looking good at the end of a needle. It's how do you look good over time? How do you really maintain this, and not just through treatments, but through actual genuine health? And I think of that as the concept of beauty span, and so that's I think another big differentiator, and something that I'm hoping to grow into and spread in the industry as well.
Well, I noticed in your Instagram you wear an aura ring. And yeah, oh, there you go. So I actually was thinking about getting one. What's the point? You wear the ring and then is it on your cell phone and what's it telling you?
Great question. So the my Aura ring, by the way, is on my left ring finger. This is my wedding ring, and I wear this because my wedding, my marriage is one of the chief motivators for my personal mission in longevity. So I see this as a tool, and also as an indicator of my commitment to good health. Personally, and one of the things I really believe about the concept of health span is as a clinician, it's really, really important to walk the walk. You can't just tell your patients to do something. It's not good enough to push a pill or say you should be eating healthy. You got to do it yourself. And so, I try to lead by example, and so does Stephanie, and that that's a really important dimension in this. So, the Aura Ring. It does interface to your phone. It does give you regular data, and it gives you information on your sleep quality. It gives you information on your heart rate and heart rate variability, which are markers of stress and cortisol levels. So there's a lot of data that comes from it that does give you real-time information, and that helps to guide decisions about when you go to sleep, or recognizing that those days that you had a drink, that you slept badly that night, or pattern recognition of things that you do that make your sleep better or your stress levels lower versus things that worsen it. And very simple things that can be put in 10 minutes in the middle of the day for simple meditation or time to yourself, just breathing exercises. You will actually see differences in your metrics. So there's a very real-time presence that you get from that. But moreover, the data that you're collecting is actually stored. So you keep this information, and the tools that are coming, which I'm a part of getting these tools out as well. These AI tools, they depend on data. This will depend on every bit of blood work you've ever had, every MRI you've ever had, all the wearables that you have, and all of that data. All of that can be fed into these tools, and that will be used to analyze you and give you a very real present day vision of your health, and do things like predicting your future health as far as your cardiovascular risk. There's an AI platform that I'm working with as an advisor that I'm also introducing in my practice called AI Nexus, and this thing is remarkable with that data and wearables and a simple camera like a phone camera and a 60-second screen. It will tell you your complete set of vital signs. It'll tell you your risk of Parkinson's disease in 10 years. It'll tell you your risk of heart attack in 10 years. It will tell you your risk of having skin cancer. It will tell you a whole host of things, and all of that just from very basic data. So, the Aura Ring is just one source of data, but you're a complex person, Catherine. There's a lot to you and a lot of data, and the more of it that you have, the more power you're going to have in the dashboard of life, and sort of figuring out how to navigate.
I don't think it's any different than running a business. As a consultant, the first thing I do when I go in, I ask for your numbers, because we have to know where we're starting from. And all business decisions are based on numbers. It's the same thing with our health. We don't know anything that's going on inside of us. The only way I know that I'm feeling weird is, well, maybe like I can't sleep as well, but otherwise, we have I need to monitor blood, because I eat power bars. They're probably like Snicker bars, God knows. Yeah. So I need to know that more, but I think data is half the battle, and having accurate data to make you, make better decisions on it. So good for you. All right, keep working on that. There was something else that you were doing regarding the business side. You're not just doing surgery, you're also doing these kind of like side gigs kind of thing, but you're also working with some of the pharmaceutical companies. And a lot of the surgeons are looking at different, I don't know, revenue streams, or maybe to just break up. Not that it's monotonous, but it is like day in and day out. Some of them just want to break and want to do something different. What are the pros and cons of working on someone else's business outside yours?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's definitely, as you said, there's ups and downs to that. I've tried to be very careful about who I align with, because once you align with somebody, that's part of your track record. You're associated with them, so be aware and associate with companies that are reputable, and that you're confident that you can actually support what they're talking about. Because in the end, you're giving your personal and professional reputation to some other entity, so you need to have faith in that. And then along those same lines, whatever entity you're aligning with, whatever company you're going to be promoting, you should be sure that you actually like their products and what they're trying to sell, because in that instance, it's not really that you're a salesperson. I don't ever want to think of myself as being a salesperson. I'm not selling for these companies. I'm teaching. I'm an educator. And if somebody has a product that I think is really amazing, and actually is a benefit to patients, I have no problem speaking about that. And if someone happens to be, giving me, some support in order to do that, that to me is not a conflict of interest. It becomes a conflict of interest when I don't believe in what I'm saying, and I'm promoting something, or I'm promoting something that a patient doesn't necessarily need. And so, there's a slippery slope there that you got to be aware of. And as long as you keep yourself on the right side, that you're educating and not selling. And whatever you're promoting, if there's a financial interest, you need to make sure you disclose it. And different boards and colleges have different requirements around that. So I'm very careful to disclose anything where there's a potential conflict of interest. But in the end, the benefit is, first off, a little extra revenue for sure. Second is I get to meet some really amazing people, and people who have really good heads on their shoulders that know business. And I've learned a lot from that. The MBA that I did was phenomenally helpful to me. I learned so much from it, and a lot of things I would have never thought about. But really, the most important lessons you learn in business are the ones you learn from just being around. And I've heard a lot of people say that I have an MBA, the master of being around. Just getting around and meeting people and interacting in different environments, you will learn a lot from that, and you will take that to your own life and your own personal business endeavors, and those connections last. I mean, all of my efforts on the non-hospital surgical facilities, my efforts to create a consortium and a group that can offer these kinds of health services, all of this has come from just normal relationships that I've developed through these various outside endeavors, and that's what's brought things together. So my advice is open the door and start saying yes, and just be aware that it's your reputation that's being associated with that. But by saying yes and trying these things out, you're gonna learn and meet a whole bunch of new people, learn new things, and there's no end to the benefits that are going to come from that.
Well, in business, they always say your net worth equals your network, or your net worth equals your net worth. And it's probably true. So I think that's a great advice. So let's lighten it up a bit. Tell us a crazy patient or staff story that you care to share.
Yeah, I've had my staff challenges. I had a staff person who was my manager for quite a few years, about 6 years, and this person, I took a personal interest in trying to support her. She smoked and she was overweight, and I was very clear when I hired, like, this is a practice where we believe in good health. And so within the first few months of joining the practice, she quit smoking, and I supported her. I got her a gym membership and trainers to sort of help her on her journey. And I was trying to nurture her as a human at the same time as giving her management skills and setting her to management courses. But throughout, I got mixed feedback from other people, from physicians that I work with, vendors, and over the years there was a series of employees in the practice that ended up I had to let them go because there was a conflict with this manager. And so each time on exit, the person would share their experience and the issues with the manager, and my manager, when I spoke with her, would say, they're just throwing me under the bus. It's just they're not doing what they're supposed to. And in the end, when things kind of came to a head, I tried to reprimand her and share some feedback, and she got really angry, and she then gave me a 24-hour notice that she was going to be going on 2 weeks vacation. And this was, partway through pandemic when things were just kind of opening up. And she came back after the 2 weeks expecting that she was still going to have a job. And I fired her on the spot. And it was really hard for me because I had taken such a personal interest in trying to nurture this person and see her through all these, this other feedback. And afterwards, she then launched a lawsuit against me, which, came to nothing. But it was upsetting. And I think, the lesson that I learned from that is, listen to the feedback that you get from, everybody around you, because, there's a full 360 of patients, employees, clinicians, business vendors that you're working with, that feedback is really valuable. And when something doesn't seem right with a person, and you're having staff turnover that seems to be around that person, listen to the inner voice. And I didn't. So there was a lot of valuable lessons to learn from that.
There's this saying, if you hear something 3 times, no, do something about it. So in this case, if you had 3 complaints from her, it's time to look at her, you know? And the more I think about that, that is so true. Like, same thing in business. If you keep explaining something like by the 3rd time and no one's getting it, you're not doing something right. Like, explain it differently or use a prop so I love that rule. If it comes up 3 times, it's time to act. Just saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Catherine, that's great advice. I'm going to absolutely take that with me.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, tell us something interesting we don't know about you.
Well, I guess through this conversation, I've made a couple of aviation references, and it's partially because I'm a pilot. I took up flying while I was in medical school, so I've been flying for about 25 years now. And so my references to owning a plane and the operating room, and my mentioning my wife Stephanie as a co-pilot. Actually, she's done ground school and about 17 hours, I think, of flight time. So she's actually training to be a co-pilot. So there's 2 of us in the cockpit. But I do one of the things I do is sort of a community service is up in the north of Ontario, my province. There is a city there which is really grossly underserviced for plastic surgery. And so every quarter I go up for a week or so with Stephanie, and we actually, do work at the hospital, do a locum, and I'm on call. So we actually fly ourselves up to that community, and it's a beautiful flight. I mean, it's over the Great Lakes. It's so nice. So it's a really great tool, and it's also a ton of fun. So yeah, that's one of my things on the side.
That's so interesting and so good for you. Is it a Cessna plane? I only know about Cessna. That's all I know.
It's close. It's something called a Cirrus, and the Cirrus aircraft. You can call it the iPad of aircraft. It's relatively new. It's about 25-year design, which in aviation is relatively new, and it's a very cool plane. Low wing. It goes very fast, and it's got really great technology integration. And the main thing, it has a parachute. So this was something new that Cirrus came up with. There's a big red handle in the ceiling. If the engine ever fails or you're in trouble, you pull the handle, chute comes out the top, the whole plane comes down. The first time I flew with my wife, I was just doing some recheck with one of my flight instructors, and he turned to her and he said, "Hey, just so that you know, there's a parachute on board, but there's only one." And of course, she was a bit nervous about that, but yeah, it's one parachute, but it's for the whole airplane. So yeah, Cirrus, Cirrus. It's a great plane. I look it up. It's a very, very cool technology.
That is insane. That parachute can hold the weight of a plane?
Yep. I think at this point, I believe that there's been about 130 or so times that these have been deployed in the world. And so far as I'm aware, every single time it's saved lives. Plane has landed safely. So I mean that's a huge leap forward in aviation. There are aftermarket. There are some Cessnas and some planes can actually get a parachute attached to them now that have been designed after the fact. But Cirrus they were the first ones. They originated the concept.
God, good to know. Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
I have twice.
Did you like it?
Loved it. It's you know what? It's one of those things. It's you need to prove to yourself that you have the wherewithal and the guts to do it.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. I mean, it's amazingly fun. I don't know that I would run to do it on a regular basis, but just to prove to yourself that you can, I think it's a great thing to try.
In California, we have, I don't know if they have them anywhere else, but they have these iFly places. And have you heard of them? And they have the big tube. And so it's kind of like that. I thought close enough. I checked it off the bucket list. Yeah.
You know what? I agree that we have that here as well in Toronto. I've done that quite a few times. And it is very much the same. That the positioning, all of it, you know what? You've done it. You've done the skydiving.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to stay
on the ground. Keep your feet on the ground. You're good.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up now. If anybody ever wanted to get a hold of you, I know that your website is CoryGoldbergMD.com. Cory is spelled Cory, GoldbergMD.com. And any other way they can get a hold of you, whether email, Instagram?
Sure. Yeah. My Instagram at Dr. Cory Goldberg MD. And I also have beautyspan.com, which is the sort of place that we're introducing the beauty span concept. So those are both ways that people could reach me directly.
Fantastic. Dr. Goldberg, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having you on Beauty in the Biz. I'll be watching you maybe a couple years from now. We'll circle back, find out how things are going with that facility franchise situation you're doing. Yeah.
That sounds great. I look forward to it. I've enjoyed the conversation very much, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone, that's going to wrap it up for us today. And if you would so kindly leave a review and subscribe to Beauty in the Biz so we can grow our audience. And then if you've got anything for me, you can leave any feedback or questions on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at Catherine Maley MBA. And with that, I say thank you, and we'll talk again soon. Success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.